Good afternoon, Simsbury teachers, educators, paraprofessionals, and those of you watching this video. For those of you I haven't had the pleasure of meeting, my name is George DeVita, and I'm a member of the fourth grade team at Squadron Line School. I'm here to talk to you briefly about my work with SEL and specifically the Compassion Project, which is put out through a company called Everfi. I'm going to share a little bit about my work with that platform in a moment. One of the things that this work was born out of was identifying the need of my students to navigate a complex social and emotional world around them and to help them grow their skill sets, their toolboxes to engage in compassion, understanding empathy, building diversity and an understanding of diversity and equity and inclusion, and being able to navigate the social and emotional world around them. So, compassion is an important social and emotional skill that begins to develop in early childhood, and it's essential for lifelong learning and success. I mean, we as adults navigate compassion and try and navigate and show compassion throughout our work, and some of us, like myself, are still working on that concept. Learning compassion for others increases a student's sense of their well being. It also improves the environment for all those learners in the classroom. If we have an environment where we're compassionate towards each other, the learning can grow and we can eliminate the disruptive behaviors that we see in the classroom and engage in fruitful and meaningful conversation and student discourse. Um, Also, with the Compassion Project, we develop an understanding of empathy, and laying this groundwork for understanding empathy builds a long term understanding of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the classroom. These all align with our vision of a graduate work at the Simsbury Public School level, where we try and create critical thinkers and those who members of a global world, members as global citizens. So the Compassion Project's been around for a while. I think 2018 they started, and they were doing some work in the younger grades, and have since expanded that work with the Compassion Project and social emotional learning to the upper elementary grades. This project is predicated on building key social and emotional learning competencies, such as understanding of self, building social awareness and relationship skills. There are interactive and online activities for the students, as well as a really easy to navigate and well thought out platform for educators. So I'm going to load up here the Compassion Project. Um, Everfi.com is what I've bookmarked here on my screen. And when we log into this, or when we get to this platform, it asks us to log in. A few brief steps will take you then to a login center where you will access the teacher center. So you'll see here we've got a catalog of information, some support courses, classes, students where you can input your students, and then reports for navigating what your students have accessed and what you have done through this project. You can also look at some assessment pieces and data collection to see where your strengths and weaknesses and opportunities for growth lie. So I won't go into the entire catalog, but it's kind of fun to explore what they have. Um, we've chosen today in this catalog up top here my work with the Compassion Project number one. So, how did I get here and where do I go as an educator? Well, the first thing that I noticed, especially this year in my classroom, is a lot of my students have had challenge identifying their emotions, recognizing what those emotions are, and really a balance between the emotion that they're exhibiting and the antecedent behavior or um, sort of activity or prompting that came up to cause that emotional, sort of stimulation. So before I even get into the Compassion Project, I love the fact that I can click on here my Simsbury School Net bookmark. I can hover over to elementary schools, and then navigate down to the SEL scope and sequence, drive, and access that as an educator. So for me, I'm going to click on third and fourth grade because that's where I am currently teaching. And what's great about this document as it loads up is that it will give me some yardstick developmental reminders, based on yardsticks. I'm sorry, the program that's put out, to remind me where my students are developmentally. So I can see here that my 9-year-olds have a tendency of demonstrating all or nothing attitude, as they navigate difficult and competitive situations. They're socially young, right? So they still are learning to see the world in a critical way. Um, they also, as 10-year-olds, start to build some maturity, collaboration, and cooperation with others, accessing some problem solving skills. And they enjoy here, which is really a good benefit, helping others and receiving praise. So, one of the things that I'll tie into in a moment as I've done this work is when I choose through the Compassion Project a platform like identifying their emotions, I tie that into my behavioral management system in the classroom. I use a system of suns where the students can fill up, the rays of sun, and at the end of the week they choose a reward as a class for that, maybe pajama day, or choice time, or STEM activities, something that they want to engage in. It might not be universal for the class, it may be unique to each student because each student is motivated differently. One may like pajama day, one may not. So I really tie it into an individual reward system that they can choose at the end of the week. So I'm going to scroll down here on my, third and fourth grade, tab from the Simsbury schools and the SEL work to look at my SEL competencies. And I notice here the first learning goal of self awareness is the ability to recognize one's own emotions through thoughts and values. So, my students right now are really having a challenge, and have a growth opportunity to identify my emotions, understand that the emotions are natural and can change, they don't linger with us forever, and describe how they impact their behavior. So, when I'm sad, how do I behave? When I'm happy, when I'm shy, how is my behavior changed through those emotions? So, there are some strategies and lessons here to help students engage in that. But I'm going to click back now to, my Everfi work. I'm going to log in. I'm still logged in, so I'm going to continue to my screen. And I'm going to navigate down to the Compassion Project. I'm going to click on Resources, and I'm going to notice that here on the left-hand side, there is a menu of options for me to choose. These menu items tie into the main screen here. I'm going to click on Planning Resources, and then I'm going to look at the course outline. The course outline gives me a snapshot of what is happening with the specific units and lessons in the Everfi Compassion Project platform. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I notice that lesson 4 here, identifying our emotions, has a 2-part session. The description tells me that the students are able to effectively communicate and identify their emotions. Over on the right hand side here, the learning objectives tie into that. So you'll see that with this, understanding our emotions part 1, my students will be able to label their emotions, describe how emotions influence their behavior. Oh, that ties in perfectly with my benchmark skills over here in the Simsbury School District, SEL competency. So I'm going to start with lesson number 4. What's really nice about the Compassion Project is I don't have to go in order. They do suggest you do, but I don't have to go in order, with my learning for my students. I can really meet them where they are. So now that I understand that I am going to be doing session 4, I'm going to click over here on lessons and activities, and I'm going to go down to lesson number 4, Identifying Our Emotions, Part 1. As I load this, Everfi has taken a good deal of time to lay out for an educator what I will need for my understanding and implementation of this unit. My objectives are listed here. If there's any prerequisite, it is here. Again, like I said, you don't have to go through those lessons. You can if you'd like, from start to finish. I've done the Compassion Project and really like the sequence, but I also have used it where I've needed to meet my students. My objectives, the materials that I will need for this unit are also labeled here. And you'll see on the left-hand side here, I've got a tab where I can navigate the different slides of this lesson. So, I won't bore you with the specific details. I'll just highlight some of the important pieces of this curriculum and lesson plan. Teacher notes, where I can look at what I'm going to be doing. I can understand where my students are. I can see what I'm going to get out of this lesson. There's an opening that has a little bit of a script for us. And there is a video link. The video links are located back at the screen prior, where we can access in planning and resources the videos that we need for the Compassion Project here. There's a 5-minute debrief after the opening. Then there is the activity, the engagement, the active work that the students are going to engage in. So this is actually students talking about emotions, how they relate to empathy and compassion. When you notice feelings of others, how would you navigate that? If someone looks a certain way, if they feel a certain way, if they've told you that they're in this emotional state, what is your job as a member of a responsible classroom? So there's a fun little pantomime activity here that we've done, which is really cool, where students have to identify emotions and respond to those emotions without students speaking. There is a second activity to this, an emotional walk around with some scenario cards and a whole group discussion. There's a closing. And then there's an evaluation piece to access the individual, or for students to go through individually to see where they are, and how their progress through this lesson was, sort of navigate how they navigated this and what they got out of it. And it tells you that they're going to do this individually. There are some extensions to the lesson, which I really like. This is really cool because a lot of times when we identify our emotions, our students are able to give us the base emotions, right? So happy, sad, angry. But are there other words that dig deeper into these sort of generic feelings? Like if you're happy, are you hopeful, excited? Are you proud? If you're afraid, are you terrified? Or are you just nervous? If you're angry, did someone annoy you? Are you annoyed that you don't understand something? How can you navigate some extensions of base emotions here? Um, there's a part here for teacher reflection. So, learners needing some additional support. I've used this to help when I've seen students struggle with this activity, and need some additional scaffolding and some support to get them to where they need to access their growth. So, I've jotted some notes here. So maybe some students who are ready for further extension of their learning, and then some notes for next time. What went well? What didn't go well? Then at the base here are the cards that I would have printed for this activity, um, that the students would have used. So, what have I done with this? Well, like I said before, I've used the Compassion Project from start to finish. So, I've gone through in the course outline, especially last year, I went through lesson 1 all the way through the end of the unit lesson where we celebrated a day of compassion, right? At the last day of this, our day of compassion, I actually had the students create a puppet show where they created their own puppets, and they gave a video linked presentation to parents and educators showing how their puppets were practicing acts of compassion. Some of them did skits relative to recess behavior. Some of them did skits relevant to helping another when they were feeling down and showing some empathy. So I really took this and had them form their own sort of student led uh, engagement activity that displayed their understanding of what compassion and empathy meant for them. You can do whatever you want with it. There are activities for practicing compassion in the classroom, in the school, the communities, and then beyond. One of the other things that was born out of this is we created a compassion chain link. So every time someone in the classroom displayed an act of compassion, kindness, empathy, social and emotional learning relative to emotional awareness and helping others, they were rewarded with a link, and we created a chain link and we stretched that link all the way around the classroom. So, tying it all together, the EverFi Compassion Project offers you a series of, of units and lessons where teachers can understand and access descriptive um, SEL learning, to engage in objectives and giving students the outcomes that they need to navigate the complex world around them. Through this work, I've noticed a reduction in behavioral disruptors and more of an engagement in a global citizenry and responsive classroom where students were helping each other, supporting each other, building each other up, and that access for me more opportunity for learning for the students. So, Compassion Project is worth a look. It's worth the 20 or 30 minutes to sign up, look through the units, look through the objectives that you'll get out of it, tie it into the Simsbury.net bookmark of social emotional learning and self awareness. I promise you that you will definitely see growth in your students. You will see students who are more resilient. You'll see learners who are more cooperative and willing to collaborate with others. As a teacher, you'll sort of have less of that, banging your head against the wall thinking, why aren't my students doing this? Why are they so disruptive? Well, engaging them in the social and emotional learning piece helps them navigate that complex world around them and engage in what we want them to do. And that is the work of the 9 and 10-year olds and second, third, and fourth grade and fifth graders in our classroom. I hope this activity helped you understand a little bit of the importance of the SEL competency and the work that the Compassion Project has helped me with in my classroom in building a more responsive, socially, emotionally aware classroom and students ready for the world around them. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me. Thank you so much for your time and good luck with your work in the social emotional realm.